could ask Democratic Services to begin recording. Started, yeah. Thank you very much. Round our pob groeso Caerfyrdd heddiw. Good afternoon and welcome to Corporate Support and Resources Scrutiny meeting, Tuesday the 15th of November 2022. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. Images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Okay, as I said, welcome. We'll go straight on to agenda item 1. Apologies for absence. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Have we got any declarations of interest? Quick meeting today. Agenda item 3 is the customer services and one-stop shop. Excuse me. We have Councillor Andrew Barry here today, Rebecca Delaney. Rebecca, good afternoon. Customer Services Manager, Mike Parry's. Yes, Mike is here. Sorry, Mike. I didn't see your delightful figure just behind. Okay. Andrew, how would you like to take this? Would you like to start or would you like to have it straight over?
Back, I'll take us. Yeah.
That's fine. Thanks. Mike, I will hand it straight over to you then to Rebecca.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Thank you for inviting us along this afternoon. Rebecca will briefly take you through her
Thank you, Mike. So I'll just reiterate the summary and purpose of the report, which is in 1.1, customer services one-stop shop fully reopened on the 24th of October, operating from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Thursday, and 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. Scrutiny members will explore, firstly, the accessibility and delivery of council services, limited officers available due to agile working arrangements. Secondly, the change in customer interaction with more online applications, customer service requests and telephone queries. 2.1, the purpose of the report, scrutiny to provide critical friend challenge of the report, and where appropriate, make proposals to help improve delivery of the. So at 3.1 to 3.5, we're looking at the background, which is that due to the coronavirus pandemic, all council buildings were closed to the public. The council has promoted digital by default for a number of years, which was a major factor in determining the direction of channel shift in light of the pandemic. At 4.1 to 4.4, we'll be discussing the opening of the one-stop shop reception effective from the 23rd of March 2022. And during this period, the one-stop shop supported our most vulnerable customers by offering appointments. This model did support the council's agile working policy and it helped to accelerate our channel shift agenda. Moving on to where we are now at 5.1, 5.10. From the 24th of October, the reception did extend the opening hours to 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Thursday and 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. on Fridays. This is a pilot that will be reviewed in December. To enable the extended opening hours, work has been redistributed to allow the one-stop shop staff to cover both reception and telephony services. Due to the increased telephone volumes over the past 2 years, it's likely that there will be longer wait times for customers on the telephones. This could be mitigated with additional staff resources. At the moment, there's currently no drop-in service for members of the public to speak with staff, but I must emphasise that if a customer does need support urgently, they will be seen at reception. If I move to 6.1 to 6.4, which is where we want to be, This is that the council continues to promote digital by default and meet the needs of our customers. It brings me to the last section, 7.1 to 7.4, which is what we do next, which is to review the pilot phase. And during the pilot, I am collecting data to ensure that the customer needs are captured and so that the impacts on staff are noted. So I'd now like to invite any questions on the. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Rebecca. Do you want to add any further comments before I bring friends?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, there's been a lot of talk in terms of reopening the stop shop. I think now we're here, it'll be interesting by December for us to gather the information, and it's going to be critical information we gather, just so that we got a statistical basis, so we're making our decisions on whether that's the way forward. Knowledge, position of knowledge. I know that Rebecca's collecting information now on it. It's early doors, but statistical information doesn't support us with the numbers through the pandemic and our experience. Up to 1,000 calls now, additional calls to where we used to be. And I think I'm correct in saying we've had, since the pandemic, just 2 complaints. So the statistical data at the moment is sort of stacked up against us really remaining closed and going with alternatives, but suggestions in terms of perhaps what we need to look at over the next few months to get to December would be.
Thanks, Councillor Barry. We've got 2 councillors, Lee and Lisa, with questions. Before I bring Lee and Lisa in, I've just got a couple of questions for Councillor Minette Vokes, so we'll just get those out for you, if that's okay. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, with regards to these, I'll read them out, but they're not coming from me, they're coming from Councillor Minette Vokes. I'll be acting as Minette Vokes. First part is the report states this is a pilot and is for review in December. Would it be worth having this fall in line with the agile working changes to flexi hours, which was agreed in full council at the agile and changes to core hours review report presented in 6 months' time? Can we request that the review of customer service and the one-stop shop be presented at the same time?
The reason why we set at the end of December is we should have sufficient information by then. Vision. So the way I totally understand the rationale of extending that, but even more information. But the reason why we took it to the end of December was that, having spoken to myself with politicians and with CMT and SL, we felt that 2-month sufficient because we already have the information through to October. The numbers, at least in the first few weeks, don't seem to be varying that much here. But yeah, I understand your point. It could well be extended to 6 months. But my own view is we should have sufficient information to make an decision by the end of.
Thanks, Mike. So to take this point forward from Councillor Minette Vokes, have we got any questions of that? Or any members support taking it to the 6 months or with December? Mr. David Jones.
Thank you, Chair. My one concern about that is that the 2-month period, that the public will know that the hours have actually been 30 till 5 o'clock. But that information is still getting out there. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jones. Lisa?
That working out, yeah. Thanks, Chair. I think perhaps we could meet halfway, you know, and where we still have the review at the end of December to look at that point in time. At that point in time, then, as a critical friend, it could be with the officers that an extension may be needed because not enough information has been received, or you haven't seen that amount of people. So I think without saying, yeah, let's go to say, you know, let's still have that review at the end of December, because I think it'll be important to have something at that point in time, and then perhaps agree an extension at that point and take on
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Mitten. In terms, Mike, in terms of the report back in December, then is that going to come here first, or will it go straight to council?
That hasn't been decided, to be honest with you, Chair, at the moment. Yeah, more than half scrutiny. I don't know what the petition's view is to take it to council.
Is it question probably? Is it within gift of this scrutiny panel decide if it come to us first then?
doing that, second you in that.
More than happy to bring it to scrutiny before. Yeah, actually, bring it here, get views.
Jones?
Yeah, it's going to back at the end of December. In until we got 7 weeks information available. Better to come back the end of January.
Okay. Mike, are we happy to proceed with that if we put that through as a recommendation? First in.
Yeah, I'm totally to council. Plethora of information already as to the 10 and 12 and 2 hours appointment. I think the main did renew because we had no reception service. It wasn't necessary to do with the number. The fact that we need access to the buildings, for example, children coming to school, and when the doors were, it's that kind of thing. So receptionist as well. We have all of the information as far as that 6 months. First few weeks that we've been, there doesn't seem to be any escalation. I mean, you know, at the number December. Yeah, I think what you said and yourself, an idea. Let's look at where we are in December, back to scrutiny, and make a decision then.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. So the 31st of January looks like a date.
Yeah, just to point out that there's some work running alongside this. That issue that Mike spoke of there. There are cameras looking to be linked now, Mike, to the front, so we'll be able to spot the team that we've got. I know there's work going on to Evans at the moment, telephone system. Continual issues that are coming up for members is you can't get anybody to answer the phone. But there's that piece of work going on. It's damn it between us and.
Thanks, Councillor Barry. So in terms of this, then are we happy to put this through as a recommendation to all support that? Show of hands. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next point, then, which Louise is question in relation to calls to speak with officers. I've recently experienced a situation where calls to speak would not be dealt with until after 2 p.m. That does seem quite late in the day, especially now considering the core hours have been taken away. The policy of calls not being taken until after 2 p.m. Please be in line with this change. This cannot be changed. What guarantees ensure that their officers are after 2 p.m.?
That was agreed with the department. It's not part of the contact centre. But the reason that they've done that is because they've got caseloads that they duty to work on is to manage their workloads. Customers at the moment are being told to back at those certain times, and initially, yeah, as well, it did cause a bit of question from public, but they have got those opening times. So whether that's something that I can monitor that as we go along, part of what I bring back with housing codes, if there are any issues with that, like in next time we come back.
Yes, please, Rebecca. I think that would be acceptable. For me, I was blissfully unaware that I couldn't speak to anybody in housing until after 2 p.m. In terms of customer service, then, does this fall within the acceptable standard we deliver service to the people if we're not taking calls? I appreciate we've also got internal work to do. So I think that's the same with every business and every company out there who takes calls throughout the day.
Just to add on that one, the housing officers are all based in the Civic, and if there was anybody present at the reception or anybody telephoned in with a like homeless, we've got a duty of care to speak to those, so they are being dealt with. And if there is anything contentious, they will come out and speak to the customers who arrive. So we can manage it with the department because we do work quite well with housing. But again, it's something that department themselves. So I can report, like I said, I can report particular issues, but the things we've got a duty for customers who are.
Rebecca, committing.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in on the back of that, and Rebecca, in fairness to you, it's a departmental issue, isn't it? You know, but that certainly doesn't sit well with me as a councillor chair, I have to say, because, you know, our priority should be the customers, which is the members of public. So I appreciate what Rebecca just said about, you know, anybody who's in crisis is concerning me, you know, especially if they're suffering, they're not going to be wanting to wait to 2 o'clock. So thank you for just highlighting that. But for me, our officers, their workload comes after the customer, with all due respect, you know, and you manage your time around that. You know, we've just put flexi time through so that, you know, they manage their working pattern around that. And if it is too heavy, then inevitably, as part of reviews with your line manager, that needs to be addressed at that juncture, doesn't it? You know, for me, it is the customer interface and our customer service charter that is the priority. So I just wanted to support the Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Mitten. Yeah, Rebecca, as Lisa's stated as well, I obviously appreciate it's not your responsibility. In terms dealing with this issue, in terms of housing, not speaking to people after 2 p.m, if they're not, etc. Do we go and how this then, customers?
The process at the moment is that if somebody does, they say they need to speak, then a lot of the queries are things that they can do online themselves if they're bidding for houses. So the customers do have alternative options of dating with. Then we also operate an inbox, and the customers are told that they will receive a call back when the service is running after 2 o'clock. They'll call them back at that time, and they prioritise the work then that comes into their inbox. Anything online requests. It also applies to the appointments that are made from reception. So if somebody says, look, it's not a homeless, but I do need to see somebody face to face, the reception staff or definitely part of the one-stop shop, we will request an appointment and they can have that face to face. So customers do have different options. But again, when they present themselves, so that's the priority service there.
Yeah. Rebecca, thanks for that. I don't quite think it answers the question really, and I appreciate. Mike, if you come in, and then I'll probably.
Yeah, there's a couple of things working which time I can answer, but I'll give an example experience of my own, which was about a young chap reception area. It was in the morning and entered his home. Was dealt with. Obviously, we're not going to send over customers problem we have is the arena housing, certainly part because of agile work, exacerbated it somewhat. We don't have officers in the building to deal with face-to-face queries as and so that is why part of the reason why we adopted this appointment system. I can assure chair and committee that when people, vulnerable people, whether they be disabled, did make sure that they
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that and I can understand that. But I think part of the point which we're missing here, the fact that if you're not vulnerable, you're not homeless, after 2 o'clock to speak to someone in housing, and that's the issue. Shit. I will do everything we can to deal with these urgent things. But an urgent problem for somebody who's not so not vulnerable to them as well. So I'm conscious of the fact that answer this, take it forward. Appreciate that, but I'm not quite sure where could actually go with this. Hannah,
I think it is difficult to comment because obviously we don't understand the operating model completely that that the housing department are operating. I'm not sure whether in the morning they're doing face-to-face appointments. Beck, I don't know whether that is the case as to why it's you know it's not an option for them to take all calls, should we say. So I'm not sure as a recommendation we should try and find out some more information from housing as to why they've got that particular operating model, because I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, if I could just add in, the telephone service is 8:30 till 10:30, if this is correct, and 2:30 till 4 for telephone service. And when we discussed with the contact centre for managing that, it was the reason behind it was that housing need to manage their casework. That's a decision that the department took, which obviously the contact centre at the moment are managing that by telling the customers when they can phone. So there's the morning and the afternoon times when they can telephone. And apart from that, it's the request and appointment service available, and these are dealt with there at the Civic when presents. So they've got the hub in town at the moment, in addition to what was set up previously. We can direct customers to the hub as well, which obviously is done by the housing staff themselves.
Rebecca.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Yes, follow. Obviously we gone flexi. Then there's going to be other people who work shifts out there as well. So if they work in till 2 o'clock, whatever time it is, and it doesn't suit them, there's going to be and I might, there's going to be people out there working in like Charles or whatever. They can't make a phone call during their working day or during that time, and they might be working 6 till 2 or 2 till 10. That's going to be an issue. And I don't see why they can't rota that one person is on available to take calls during that one day. They do it in other places like social services, so I don't see why that can't happen. Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. Lisa, did you have your microphone on this before Andrew? Yeah.
Cheers. So I think it just leads on really, and I think it's helpful then, isn't it? Because being the critical friend today, then we can discuss these when we talk about the report back in January. So it's not within the body of this report, and it may be separate. So forgive me if it is, and then we can take it perhaps as a separate item for this particular scrutiny. But with regards to within the body of the report, it talks about sometimes officers aren't available, so we do offer the appointment service. But are there duty officers available for social services issues throughout the day?
Yes, Councillor, the duty officers are available by telephone and being located in the building.
Great. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. I think it's just reiterating that point because of the situation we find ourselves in with the cost of living crisis. You know, a resident has presented themselves to a colleague today in absolute crisis and a working person, you know, so find themselves in crisis, never been in that situation before. So they're going to want to come to Civic, you know, to really get that eye to eye contact and that support really. So it's just, I just wanted to clarify that. That is really helpful because I think sadly that's going to increase over the next couple of weeks and months. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. So Barry,
I know that customer service. I would like to Chair, if that's Hannah, can you look into this? Find out exactly where. I think it sits at odds with the rest of us. Should be good. Just take a look at that, perhaps, and when we back to this report. But that's a really concerning development as far as need very best customer service. Early as Lisa's out to see with clarity services. I'll be guided by you, Hannah. With sure, perhaps if the other departments restrictions on us and put data, because otherwise it's being led what's convenient. That's okay, Chair. If Hannah looks at it and then brings.
yeah, great. Thanks, Councillor Barry. This something which just discussing now whether it could be whether an officer could bring a report back for our next scrutiny. Can be done next time or just convenient. Is that okay with everybody? Great, thanks. Move on to another point Louise is making. A question in relation to 5.7, 5.9 and 6.4. As older persons champion, I'm aware of many older residents in our community that do not have access to the internet, but of social media, and would support to be able to access anything online. 6.4 states that many of the changes have been successful and notes the cost of living support scheme. As a ward councillor, I raised many concerns about how this was rolled out, that many residents did not know how to apply or not able to access anyone to speak to about it. I know the officers and revenues worked hard to ensure they spoke with residents and were brought to their attention by elected members. To ensure that no one's excluded, what will be in place to ensure that those who do not have digital access or support are not excluded? Before we come to answer that, Mike, we had Jane Selwood from Trust here, one of our meetings, and she highlighted a huge increase people attending the attending the libraries, etc., for help with online support to do with the council. So that was quite concerning in itself. So I think Louise's point is quite poignant to ensure these digital available for.
What I would add is that the cost of living when we were open at 10 till 12 and when customers were bringing in and asking for support because they couldn't post any they've got family to help you with questions, but we did tell them to call to the reception at 10 between 10 to 12, 2 to 4. We actually facilitated the phone on the desk, on the reception desk. I know myself, I'd been out as well with the laptop in reception and helped a few. And also, if they wanted to, they could use the PCs in the reception area. but we were able to actually complete some by the telephone if they had the information to hand. Like I said, they came to the reception and we had them at the front desk.
Okay, thanks for that, Rebecca. Just a follow up from myself with regard to that then for this question. Are we going to put anything in place now to go forward?
The outcome of the review in December will that I would have. I mean, the reason why, if you look back historically, the reason why we've adopted this calls during the COVID, effectively the 2 years near, which meant that the only way, regardless of vulnerability, that's our service, so our web is or through telephony, our online form. But what we did do is to make sure that when we were contacted by vulnerable, we spent as much time as we could resolving their issues via the telephone. And there were occasions after the COVID pandemic restrictions finished, actually affected by some elderly vulnerable, we sent people out to fill the forms and people. The issue here data for majority of the light was on.
Thank,
Yeah.
thanks, mate. Appreciate that. Councillor Jones.
Age Alliance Wales, one paragraph from Action for Elders participants have identified access to digital inclusion having a disproportionate negative impact. For example, in terms of their ability to access health services, bring the benefits they're entitled to, and benefit from cheaper online prices. This is borne out by research conducted by Public Health Wales that showed that smartphones are the most common route to the internet. The rate of smartphone ownership is substantially lower in older age groups. For example, whilst 96% of 16 to 24-year-olds having smartphones, 57% of over 75s had them, so ownership on a step increase years. Gap is wider in Wales. Just 18% of over 75 have one. That was an Ofcom report. This situation is unlikely to improve as older people with fixed incomes face the difficult decisions or heat. And whilst there is a massive need for digital inclusion, the younger people will be able to access it. Is still concerned, as far as I'm concerned, element there's in this email 75s with only 75s having access. I think we need to test that as well.
Totally accept what you're saying. I understand what you're saying as well. But I mean, I hate to put it this way, we have to look, we take a little bit of a reality check here and say, well, what resources we TFB to the gold standard service, customer services that I want, but realistically, we're not going to be in a position to deliver. The other thing I would say, I've said in there is, if you look at the way the private sector works, and the public sector tends to fall several years later, a utility point of view, exactly what council says. A utility point of view, you can't speak to anybody. Everything is done via speak to people, but you can't have a face-to-face conversation with them. And I think, realistically as a council, we have to accept that in the future at some point, this is the way that it's going to be. I don't necessarily agree with it. That's not the way I'd like it to be. I'd love to be able to offer like their gold standard customer service. That's my raison d'etre basically. But I have to factor in the fact that we don't have the resources to be able to the way things are looking at the moment. It's unlikely that that's going to happen in future years.
Whilst I agree with you, Michael, I know that difficult over. Should it be going to be the one be the pricing initially?
Definitely not, which is why we need to focus our limited resources on making sure that our most vulnerable customers are dealt with compassionately.
Barry.
Thank you, Chair. It's absolutely valid data sets you presented there. I think the only thing that we can do as an authority is look at the information that we hold. If we are excluding, best we can. I think there's the grant that we've had for cost of living crisis. I'm right in saying we've got some of the highest Wales in terms of sure that they are delivered to people. 98%, 2 or 3, isn't it? It's excellent performance. I think it's that what we need to look at. It's evidence such as what is our collection rate at the moment. That dipping. You see, conjugal exclusion is a factor within that. We can only look at the information that we've got to determine whether we are digitally excluding. As valid as the information you have, it's a difficult balance between the two, isn't it? To say is that a problem for us? And when you look at our figures, such as the inclusion in terms of cost, it wouldn't appear to be, but you're absolutely right to bring it up. I think the evidence for us so far that probably doing a pretty good job, and it doesn't support excluding. I wouldn't say.
Because any services that we are providing with the cost of living and the winter fuel as examples, there is always an alternative, not just online. So the majority of customers will go to the online option, but the contact centre as a starter point, the departments as well, we always offer to help them over the telephone. And if that isn't again when we're on the call, we will offer them to come in and be an officer. So there is always, for any service with us, whether it's the winter fuel, across all services, there is always an alternative for any customer.
Councillor Davis.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, obviously 5-6 years ago, Communities First was still here, and there was hubs within communities where those development workers like myself could have worked with those people within their communities. Obviously, that's not here anymore. But obviously, we started a new initiative up of community-focused schools, and they're going to be mapping venues across all of our communities, and they're going to be obviously working in our communities. I know it's community-focused schools, and we talk about elderly here. There's no reason why I use that data and, put some comms out there to people. Karen Larsing, Gurness is there, and you can go and seek advice and help there to help fill in the forms. That's maybe one that we can do. And library services as well, as Councillor Carter said, with Queen Selwood said in the last meeting as well.
Councillor Davis.
That's an excellent point to leave. I think that outreach service with community schools and community hubs we would be better in developing that in terms of support out in the local rather than suppose trying to look at our digital expensive option, can't it? But I think that's an excellent point, and I think that may be the way forward, particularly into the future. If you look at, we've got a stop shop, but if we went down the road where the one-stop shop was closed, then we got a huge area here, which purpose in terms of repurposing that to generate some income. We can look at going out into the community, which is where it'd be more valid, I think, and to stretch into the community so that our services become available on a wider geographical basis. Yeah, to particularly when you look at transport issue as well.
It helps the conversation. We've got a joint scrutiny workshop, myself, colleagues from Learning and Layskip and colleagues from Social Services next Monday, so we could feedback, because we are looking at the impact of cost of living and poverty, so that it'll all come, together across the, as far as like those warm pubs and places where people could go, you have digital support, so yeah, we can feed that back, Chair.
That would be great. Thanks, Lee. Okay. Lastly, sorry over this, Becca, on 6.4 of the report, I think Louise has been with Clive Jones a little bit too much. But part of the report, there seems to be a bit of a grammatical error where near the bottom of 6.4, any of these changes have been successful, such as the cost of living scheme. Just could that be amended? I do apologise. She's spending too much time with Clive. I'm not sure who was first, who had their hands up earlier, so Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. It follows on slightly. I got a couple of questions. Going to the flexi working now, and obviously we 8:30 till 5 and 4:30. Is there any staff members expressed working longer in the evenings? So could that be a possibility that we're open later than that time? So they start later in the mornings, but work till 7, 8 o'clock to suit their family.
Do you mean in the one-stop shop?
Yeah. They might not have asked yet, but that could be a possibility, I guess.
Yeah, that hasn't been something that's been considered, but again, I'd have to go back to the data which shows when customers are actually us. Since we've reopened the extended hours now, times that customers are visiting has stayed, but they're not due at 8:30 in the morning. I mean, it could be something that we do that, but have to be based on any day.
Yeah, if we're advertising that time, they're not going to want to come in later because it's obviously going to be shut. But obviously people, like the point I made earlier, people work and they work hours to what a year. So if it was open in the evening, they might come. Yeah.
Also, to add into that, to manage that, then evening hours as well, we'd have to have an investment in members of staff to be able to manage it from the office hours, plus if those extended services till 7 in the evening, we'd have to have patient of staff then, and currently we struggle with staff in terms of the hours, the office hours now, so it'd have to be an investment of staff then to man those extra hours as well. So whether that would be something we invest in us.
Yeah. I was just asking out of had anybody asked to work those hours rather than
nobody has.
Okay. I got two more, Chair, if that's okay. 5.6, there have been 27 requests for an appointment. There are only 5 face-to-face meetings. Could you tell us why that was?
Yeah, so that's based on when we reopened on the 23rd of March. That was when we opened the 10 till 12, 2 till 4. At that point, it was operating model was we offer appointments support, basically agile working, so that officers then, if somebody wanted to see them face to face, they would then liaise with the customer and arrange a face to face appointment at a time convenient for them when they are in the office if they work from home. So what that's pointing out is that over that 8-month period, in dealing with the customers, telephony and reception, 27 customers had actually asked for a face-to-face appointment with a member of staff during that 8-month period, because everything else was dealt with either over the telephone or at reception. And out of those 27 requests, when an officer rang those customers, only 5 actually materialised into a face-to-face meeting where they did need to come in and see an officer in council.
Just on that topic, can you request a face-to-face meeting via online, or is it if you're going to phone up and ask for that?
What happens that the customer would either ask at reception and we'd fill the contact details out. Same on the telephone, we'd pass the call through the telephone, and then if they pass to deems that they need to come in, then they would make those arrangements themselves with the customer. This is managed by the department so that they think convenient to both and themselves. They could, whether they do that on Teams or that's entirely up to the officers themselves, and from that point onwards.
Thank you. Last question. 7.2, it says about drop off in calls 2 to 5%, and then raise into 20%, and staff are taking leave. What do those numbers equate to? You know, what does 20% look like?
Okay, so at the moment we have about 5 calls a day, which is about 300 a day. So that's where we started from. So when we've got that number of calls, with the level of staff we've got, if we're fully staffed, and at the moment we can only allow 2 staff off on any one day. If we're fully staffed, then the drop-off rate of calls, so where there's a number of reasons why it's classed as an abandoned call in terms of a contact centre. So it could be one of the reasons is that there's a waiting too long on the telephone, so they end the call. When we're fully staffed, that is an average of 2 to 5% during that day. But if we've got staff off, which obviously staff leave, if that happens, then the rate of the abandoned calls, that's what I've been monitoring, it does go up to between 18 and 20%. So it just shows the flexion is when we haven't got enough staff to man those calls, especially at the moment where we've got reception to cover as well. There have been many times when there's only been one advisor on the telephones. When you think they're dealing with that number of calls a day, abandonment rate rockets. And at the moment, that's just the number of people on the telephones has risen, and we've only got so much resource to deal with those. So that figure reflects balance of the staff covering the reception and the phones, and it is difficult when thinking about the cost of living crisis and bringing in for support. Those have risen over the last 2 years, and they've stayed at a constant, the 1,000 calls extra a week. Manage that. At the moment, reception needs to be covered. We've got to cover lunch breaks as well. So are waiting longer, and our percentage is up a lot.
That is a concern. I phoned an RSL today, and I know Councillor Barry said about looking at this. Then they had would you like a call back or whatever? Press 1 in your telephone number, and you could leave an answer phone message to say what your query was about. Maybe something. Obviously, your man hours, you've got to phone them back as well. So I get that. They could be called back when times are a little bit quieter. I think that is something that we should possibly look at.
I just add on to that point that what I'm doing is working with department managers as well. Because when a call comes into the contact centre, it is a case of triaging and then passing to the departments. But if we can't get a call, can answer within those departments, other calls are backing up. What we're trying to do is find other solutions to passing that call on, whether we've got something called telephone logger, whether we can say to the customer, this is where the call will be logged and something back. When individual departments set up answer phone services, but from the contact centre point of view, that call isn't being held there for a longer period of time, so that the customers who are waiting to get through to the customer, they haven't got that long a wait time because the calls are being dealt with, passed on to various options. That is definitely something we're working on at the moment.
Last one on that. terms of you take a call and then you're going to refer it to a different department, how many come back to you with no answer? Is that quite high? So that obviously is taking you a time waiting for them to answer, and you've got to speak to that customer again.
That's partly why the telephone audit exercise has been undertaken by Ellis, because there are issues with contact center going through staff for various reasons. With the introduction of Teams, got to understand that if somebody's on a Teams meeting, they can't also answer the telephone. But again, it's back down to the managers then and cover, so like does to answer the telephones. Figures will vary depending on what department we're trying to contact, and obviously if they've got very few staff, it's difficult for them to manage as well. But to give a percentage, I couldn't really give. You'd have to look at particular departments. It wouldn't be fair to say 50% because some departments always answer, so difficult. They'd have to do a very full breakdown really of different departments just to say to everybody. The main services are very few times.
Thanks, Councillor Lewis. Before I bring Councillor Barry in, just for clarity, Rebecca, talking about roughly 100 calls a day being unanswered, which could potentially lead customers not accessing the service. I see that as an issue. I appreciate the resource as well. Is there anything else we can possibly do? I was talking about potential callbacks and things.
Some departments use what I mentioned then, a telephone logger, where we could take the information of the call and that's logged onto a system, and then that's obviously to the department. They manage those messages and call back within. So that's one thing which we that could work across all departments. Is very limited. That's one. At the moment, we've been issues with getting calls through emailing officers, but then that's not always yet generic inbox. That's fine and that works. But we wouldn't email individual. That's the point where customers rang in quite a few times, so I think the best ones are the answer phone services and the telephone logger. So that's, like I see, that's the, but that's got to be manned and it have to be.
Lastly, in terms of, because you triage in the call, is going to a 7 to 7 effect we're trying to get over?
That is potentially what could happen. Obviously, after the department's end would obviously have to man the department generic numbers, wouldn't they? So I think we need, if we look at that, it is an option for the future. Answering in. Got that right first of all.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Rebecca. Barry?
Yeah, just occurring to me, Chair, really, that you mentioned earlier that the currently with shop and father, but have you had sight of the terms of reference? The scrutiny in, because it's a common theme that's coming up continually. Stop shop, is it? It be an idea. Telephones.
I'm happy to. Davis Mitten. Any other questions from me? I've got a couple. Sorry. Section 3.2 of the report mentions IVR. IVR. I assume this is telephone software that you use. Can you just clarify?
That's correct. It's the voice recognition. New options on the telephone.
Rebecca. 4.3 of the report also explains Our back office staff have adopted the use of online forms as a way of contact and engagement with the public. I know we discussed this quite a bit. Has this been adopted across all areas? Issues with the accessing services?
Not that I'm aware of. We've done a few exercises over the last 5 years, really, of working with the web development team. They will work with on all the forms that we need. I can't think of any that we haven't got any. Check that. As far as we're aware, it's a continual development of the. I'm pretty sure.
Thanks, Rebecca. Lastly, from me then, and hate to put you on the spot, you know, you may have the answer to this, you may not. For the customer visits, the one-stop shops that we get in, how many of those queries are being resolved there and then?
Depends what we mean by resolved. The highest footfall that we have in currently, well, since we opened, they are dealt with at first point of contact because they are the handing in a form, like the blue badge applications, bags, collecting those, help with any tax benefits, housing. They are all things that we can deal with at reception. And so I would say quite a high majority are dealt with at this point of contact. And when you say dealt with, count that as well as requesting an appointment. So they do have an answer while they at reception.
In terms of the report you're going to bring, these sort of figures comes report. So in terms of people perhaps being turned away if they can't access any services or nobody's available, that be part of the report.
It can be as you like, as we are every service. That's on. So it's not all the information statistics. So yeah, we can make it as in depth as the scrutiny committee. Those figures will be available.
Thanks, Mike. What are members' thoughts on that? Would we that much of an in-depth report?
Available, and it would be useful to carry this forward, then I can't.
Okay, thanks for that. There doesn't seem to be any more questions. Any members' comments? Oh, okay. Purpose of obviously the report, Rebecca, is to try to be a critical friend. Challenge of the report where appropriate. Questions, make proposals, etc. I hope you found it that way. I certainly have, and I think from my perspective as chair, I think we've had some great questions and some very good answers. So from me, thank you very much for attending today, both of you, and thank you for your honesty and candor. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the report. Rest of the meetings. Okay, great. We'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the forward work program 2022-2023. We had a meeting last week, a pre-meeting, to discuss this. We've got things for the forward next meeting, which will be depth. So I'm not overly concerned with that. What I was concerned about is get together to look at the cabinet work, something in there as well. That's something I don't want to spend too much time on the phone. But did have agreed together cabinet work. Is that okay with?
31st, it's quite busy. It's like it's 3 on it already.
It is. Oh, that's great. Any questions, any comments? Great. Okay, item 5 is a scrutiny referrals. There aren't any at the moment. Item 6, report recommendations. In terms of the meeting, how do we feel that the report, the questioning, the recommendations for the customer service? See, there was recommendations as such on there, just been a critical, but we did introduce recommendations.
I thought it was really good. I was a bit concerned it might be a bit quick, and questions are really.
Excellent, thanks, Lee. I don't. What comes to David Jones? Sorry.
Following on from what said, we did put a fair challenge up to them and hope will help to in the way that the policy is organized.
There was a couple of things that got highlighted today that I didn't even know about. So, the housing, telephone, the time, I didn't know about that. So I think that was just for that, it was worthwhile as well.
The department following suit, if other departments have heard about housing doing that, are other departments following suit? And that worries me as far as the agile working is concerned. I'm all for it, don't get me wrong, but we still have to manage expectations. We still have to certainly manage public expectations. That's the priority, isn't it? Or even councillors. So, yeah. So I think that, I got a sneaky suspicion it's probably not just housing. Perhaps there's other departments thinking along the same thing. And, does it work? Have they had many complaints? Perhaps that's the other flip of the coin we need to look at. Perhaps it's working that way. But I just think for a customer facing organisation, public service organisation, customers should come first. And,
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Councillor Mitten. I just discussing this here. In terms of that, it's probably a good thing if we look at the operating model across the authority then. How we actually question, get that so
measure impact then, because is it working? So let's say they are managing their workload effectively by doing that, and there aren't customer complaints. How do we evidence that is actually working then, isn't it?
That drop off to say they know the complaints as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, we've asked Hannah to come back with this report now as well. Dave, can we ask? She's not here. Can we ask Hannah to look at it?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. Don't see an issue with that. But Hannah, March to separate to the initial proposal that present the report. Yes, agile work. As Mike says, if they look as soon, like perhaps some items, judging by the response, an issue at the moment. Certainly I'll have a chat with Hannah, see what we can. January.
Are we happy to leave that in safe? Okay, no, great. Thanks very much. Okay, agenda item 7, feedback on scrutinies. There's no recent activities back on. Agenda item 8, any other business deemed urgent by the chair? I have none. I apologise for being late today. I will blame the fact that I 4:30, but oh, there we are. I wasn't on my own. So I'll take the blame. I'll take the blame for that. We all did. All right, okay. Yeah, thank you all for attending and thanks for your contributions today. I think it was a really constructive meeting. So thank you all very much.